Well, we might get started, and as people join in, they can just pick up where we're up to. So tonight, well, firstly, thank you everyone for coming on board and taking the time on their Wednesday afternoon or night to come and learn something about coaching for the domestic side of things. I know out of all the things I've coached, I find domestic probably the most challenging to coach. So I think, your hard work's done if you're already coaching a team. You know, it only gets easier from here. So, with domestic, you get anything that comes your way. You get players who never played before, but some of the high levels you get, you've got people who had a bit more of an idea. So I really thank you all for taking the job and taking that time to be a coach. And people like me really appreciate the work that you guys put in. So I will. Well, first I better make sure everyone's on mute all. There we are. Perfect. If you do have any questions, send them through to me. I'll open the chat box at the end and I'll go through them all. So just send them through when you've got them. I'll share my screen. Oops. Where is, that's the one I want. All right. Can you guys see what I've got here? Yep, good. Thank you. And where am I? Oh, not working for me. Shortcut. Oh, I'll make a click on it. All right, perfect. Cool. So we're talking about man-to-man defense tonight. My name's Lachlan Stokan. I am the Director of Coaching at Craigieburn Basketball. I also coach our Youth League 1 men, and I've been coaching VJBL for about 12, 13 years. So I've been a long time doing this, and over the time, I think I've never been amazing, but I think I've picked up a fair bit of tools into the tool belt that I can hopefully pass on to you guys as we go. So tonight, what we'll be talking about is man-to-man defense. So this is what we're going to cover. So we'll talk about what it is, basically, and then we'll talk about why we should use it, and then we'll go into some teaching points of how you can teach it, and then probably the most important things is drills you can use to help teach it. All right. So first I'll go into this one. This is a club curriculum we're developing. So throughout the whole Craigieburn, we're going to have this document that outlines how we're going to play. This is a draft at the moment, but there's a section that will I'll refer you to. So we have an offensive style of play, which we're going to implement, but there's also a defensive side of things here. And I thought I'd share that, guys, with you. So I'll share that with you because there's some words in here that sort of carry on into what we do. So we sort of break it down, defense, into sort of 4 sections. So at the higher level, we say like the youth league, we split it into sort of the shot clock. The shot clock is 24 seconds. And we say this each 8 seconds, we want to do these things. So first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we disrupt. So a lot of this has come from Basketball Australia, from their guidelines of what they suggest how you should play. So a bit of that, and from Basketball Victoria, from consulting with them. So we want to match up in our players immediately and straight away, preferably in a full court. So once, we shoot the ball, we're ready to go, ready to play our defense. And we want to sort of make teams uncomfortable. That's something that we want to be known for at Craigieburn, is making people uncomfortable in what they're doing. So our aim is to disrupt their natural flow of what they want to do. If players want to dribble on their right hand, we want to say, okay, we're going to make you dribble on your left hand. If they want to pass to this spot, we say, well, we're not going to let you pass there. We're going to make you pass somewhere else. We want to make them do things that they're unfamiliar doing. And the big thing is, like in the backcourt, we don't want them to be able to pass the ball up ahead and to beat us and attack us. We want to try and make them go backwards, take up time and panic. You can get an 8-second violation. That's the best thing we can do. So just from the disrupt what they do. After that, after we've disrupted them and they get in that half court set and they've got the ball over at the 3-point line, we're going to try and deny. So what that simply means is we're going to try and stop them from catching the ball in threatening spots. So we make that person with the ball, trying to find passes. They can't quite find passes because we're denying catches. That's sort of where we want to be in the denial stage. And the last stage, when they come to shoot, we want to contest, or another thing is here, influence. And I think that's a really big word that I think you should be using with your kids, is to influence the shot. Defensively, kids will really want to get those big rejections, be the big hero, block it against the backboard, do something amazing like that. But in actual fact, that's probably the worst thing you can do defensively. You know, most times, most blocks are not from the person guarding, it's from the second person up. And then, you know, a lot of the times, you probably don't see it, but they fake that, they pass to the guy. In the NBA, there's a big dunk. So I'm always big on influence the shot. So without, you know, touching them, without doing anything, all you're going to do is influence what happens on their shot. And that simply means just change their shot. So if they've got a certain shooting motion, if you make them just twist a little bit to the side and then shoot it, you've done your job. Influence that shot away from their natural rhythm. And the last thing we do is we want to rebound. When that shot goes up, we secure the ball, and then we come down and we take it down our end. All right. So what is man-to-man defense? There's two typical defenses that you probably would have heard of, is man-to-man and zone. I'll talk about that in the next one, the difference between them. But simply put, man-to-man defense is where you have a designated player to be responsible for, and you guard them. So each 5 players on the court have one person who they're responsible for, and they go to that player each time. In man-to-man defense, there's 2 popular ways to do this. You may hear of something, say, a pack line defense, and then more of a denial defense. So a pack line defense is where you can just see here where players 2 and 3 dropped off a little bit towards the key, whereas in the denial, they're up there denying the passes to their players. We would much rather teach the denial method, and that's purely because it takes a lot longer to grasp, and it's harder for players to understand, and it takes them longer to learn. And if you learn denial, and you can do denial, it's really easy to go back to pack line. And that's something that Basketball Victoria teach it as well. They teach denial, so that's our governing body. That's what they teach. So it makes sense that we teach the same thing. So denial defense is the way to go. And that's simply put, you know, this guy, he has the ball, this plays on him. His natural passes will be to 3 or to 2, and we're up there trying to stop that pass, trying to disrupt them and deny them their options. Why do we teach it? Well, we teach it because it's an essential part of the game. There's two parts of the game. There's one, there's the scoring side. There's the other one is to stop them from scoring. And as Drew alluded to last week, there was those 5, you know, key concepts that we have. You know, so you're going to be able to sort of dribble the ball, you've got to pass it, you've got to shoot it, you've got to have some footwork to play basketball. And the last one is you're going to be able to guard a player. If you can't guard a player, then you're going to be a one-way basketballer, and you're not going to go the distance in what you do. And man-to-man defense is quite a complex skill to grasp, and it does take some time. Things like a zone defense is where, like you said often, where a lot of people just go back to the key and sort of clog up space in the key. That's really effective under 10s and 12s, but the big thing about that is you're not doing justice for the long haul. Those players aren't learning how to play man-to-man defense, and at a higher level, at an older age, to play a good zone defense and a pressing defense, you need to know man-to-man concepts. So a common misconception is that zoning is just clogging up space and so it's taking up space on the floor. It actually isn't. You're responsible for a space, but you're responsible for the people within that space. And you need to have man-to-man principles, know how to guard those players to do that. So it's really important that we teach man-to-man from a young age. And the earlier you start, the quicker they'll pick it up because they won't know any different. So my suggestion would be to do that from the get-go. Also, VJBL, which is the representative program across the state, they've banned all zones in under 12s and 14s basketball. I think a couple of years ago we trialled that at a domestic level, but that didn't stick because it was too hard to govern. It was too hard to patrol. We can't really patrol people zoning. We don't have the volunteers to go around and to bust the zones. So we're trying to go in the line of discourage it, strongly discourage, and try and promote man-to-man and maybe educate people on the advantages of man-to-man defense and how to do it. So that way, you've got no excuse not to do it. So teaching zones is setting them up to fail later in the journey. As athletes become older, they become a lot smarter, and so do the coaches. And even me myself, I know that when there's kids who can't play defense, you sort of target them. In the rep side of things, even with our youth league team, we always we know who the weaker defenders are, and we try and run our offense through those players. And at a domestic level, if they can't guard the ball, then that's going to lead them to maybe not enjoy it as much, and then make them walk away from the game, which is what we don't want. We want to keep them involved. When we get to defending the ball, there's two types. You can defend on the ball or off the ball. Simply put, when you're defending on the ball, that means the player you're manned up with has the ball. So they've got it and you're stopping them. If you're off the ball, that means your player doesn't have the ball, but you're still responsible for them, and then you adjust yourself depending on where the ball is. All right. But I've taught in the past. I've taught domestic, and a really good aim is to who really cares if you get scored on. I'm always a firm believer of if they're going to one player each and staying with that player and understanding that they're responsible for one player, that's a step in the right direction. The rest will come with that. So that's sort of baby steps with that, especially off ball. If they're understanding that they've got to go to their player and stay there, you can teach them where to stand later on in their basketball journey as such. But if they know they're responsible for that player, that's the right step. So on ball, when you're on ball, I usually go with these sort of 4 things here to how to teach it. Sort of like key teaching points, key points that I always use whenever I'm teaching and coaching, especially junior basketballers. And the first one we'll start with is be in a low and athletic stance. So always have your feet waist distance apart. So you don't want to be upright, you don't want to be too close together, you don't want to be too wide. You want to be in an athletic stance. Back in the day, they always spoke about being low, wide, but they've gone away from that a little bit. It's more described as an athletic stance, and depending on the person will depend on your stance. So if you might have a really tall person, they might have a completely different stance to someone who's really small, simply put because their bodies are different and their center point of gravity will be in a different spot. So as long as they're on their toes, ready to move, and they're watching the player's waist. A lot of things where people get tricked out with is they go from follow ball fakes, they follow leg fakes, they follow whatever head fakes. Whenever a player moves, if you watch their waist, they can't really do a waist fake unless they're moving. So we always say, if you're just watching their waist, you're going to sort of stay with your player. Tough. That should be touch distance from the ball. That should be the one there. But you want to be, when you're guarding on the ball, you want to be touch distance from the basketball. So that way, if you're guarding the player, you can reach out and just tap the ball. You're close enough. Otherwise, if you're too far back, they've got lots of room, and you're not really disrupting like in the standards that we want. So you want to be touch distance from the basketball. This allows you to, if they pass the ball, you can get deflection, you can apply that pressure, and you can make it a little bit more, makes the offensive player think a little bit. So they don't have so much space to worry about where they're going to pass the ball. They're more thinking about, well, how close is this person to me? What do I do? Can I pass there? Are they going to get a hand on it? So already you get in their mindset of you're disrupting them while you're inside their thinking. And by being touch distance, you want to make sure that it's an outreached hand. So it's not a closed hand where you're body to body on them. You want to be able to reach out and touch the ball. So you've got like an arm's length distance on them. That's the best way to go. So that way you're not going to get blown by. If you're too close and they just go straight away, then players will be discouraged to do that, because they keep getting blown by. But if they get that little sort of arm's distance away from them and they go, they can jump across and block them. Next one I'd say is don't jump on the shot, which we spoke about earlier. If your opponent shoots the ball, don't jump and try to be the hero and block it. All right, I know I've been a victim of this in the past, but I've tried to be the hero and it never really ends up well. There's actually a very small chance that you'll get a successful block. Most times, the way the game gets refereed now is they always go to the benefit of the offensive player. So if you leave the floor and you make any sort of contact with the player, most times they're probably going to call a foul on you. So we try to avoid that situation and we say, don't jump on the shot, just put your hands straight up. Another good thing is, another way people get sucked into fouls is if they go hands straight up, they sort of reach their hands over towards the ball. Another good saying is pretend you're in a Coke can. A lot of times people refer to staying inside your cylinder. And that's pretty much saying if you were a Coke can, your hands can't go outside that cylinder to get the ball. So if you're putting your hands straight up in the air, you stay inside your cylinder, and then you're not going to reach over and get a hand there. But if you reach over, you're coming out of your cylinder, and if you make contact, there's a high chance you can get a foul called on you. So it's just about trying to reduce the chance of having a foul called on you. And that comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is you sort of want to influence the shot. You don't necessarily need to block the shot or, completely stop it from happening. I've never participated in a game where a team did not shoot against us. The team's always going to get a shot up. But if on each shot, if you can affect it, influence it, and change it, then that's good defense. And the most important one is stay between your player and the basket. You want to block your opponent's path to the basket. Don't worry about stealing the ball. Just block their path, and then the rest will happen. I always talk about when I'm coaching kids and I'm on the court physically with them, I'll pretend to tie a bit of string to the offensive player's head, and I'll take that string to the basket. And I was like, all right, stand inside that line. And no matter where that player moves, just block that string line. That's really been effective with kids I've coached in the past. Just them seeing that it's an imaginary bit of string, but imagining that string from their player to the basket, they're going to block that direct line. And no matter where that player moves, you move and block that line. And if the player doesn't have a direct line at the basket, then that's going to make it harder for them to score. Now, off the ball defense becomes a lot more challenging. And if you're coaching the younger levels, then you may not need to introduce this at all. This sort of takes a long time to sort of master and get kids to understand where to go positioning wise for when you get to off-ball defense. I've coached kids at 12, 14, 16 level who still need work with their off-ball defense. Even some of my youth league players in pre-season didn't know where they'll go in the right spots. So this is something that takes a long time. So this is something you really need to be patient with, the off-ball defending. But I think it's important to still cover it, so then you have an idea of what's next. Because I think that's really important in teaching, that you know where the next step for them to take it is, so then you know where they're going to next. So we always go about, it's always depending where the ball is. So I want a few things. So number one, your player either has the ball, you are one pass away, or you are two or more passes away from the ball. So if your player has the ball, then you are this stuff. You're on that on-ball defense. All this stuff we spoke about, you're doing that. But if your player doesn't have the ball, then the further away the ball is, the closer you can come towards the basket to sort of help. So if you're one pass away, then you're what we call in the passing lane. And the passing lane is simply just the straight line of where a player would pass the ball to an opponent. So you look at this demographic up here, player number one, he has the ball. And say if he wanted to pass to player number three, defender number three here in the black circle would have his hand here in this passing lane to block that line. So then they've blocked the passing lane so you can't make that pass. Then that player would actually have to move further out or have to do a lob pass or a risky pass that we can then sort of disrupt, gather, and we can get the ball and go ourselves. So that's been in the passing lane, and we call that sort of denial. And that's where that deny section comes in. Next is if you're 2 or more passes away. So as the ball moves, you sort of move as the ball goes and you go closer to the ball. So if you look at this picture here, you've got player number 3 here has the ball in the corner. So defender 2 can come to sort of the halfway point of the court. So you can call this, it's got a few different names. In the past, I've called it pistols with kids because we say you point your pistols and your arms are straight out like an old Western duel. They sort of grasp that concept, but other people call it high or low eye, or it's also called split line. So you can come to those sort of spots. And all that simply means is player 3, in any sort of basketball you play, elite level as well, the chance of them making a pass from here, cross court to this guy over here, without him getting a hand on it, is very unlikely. So you don't really need to stand right next to your player to be in that passing lane. You can actually be a little bit closer to the ball. So if by some chance that this guy gets past here and came into here, player 2 could run at him and stop him from getting a scoring opportunity. Now, we call that help defense. So you can provide help defense from this high and low eye or split line spot. But then if they do that for that big pass over here, they will either intercept it or they could get back and get onto that on-ball defense as they're playing before. And as I said before, this is a really hard thing for kids to grasp and to master. And this takes a lot of time and practice for them to become fluent in and to remember. So this will, if this may not be for you, for your team right now. I know I coach an under-10 girls team and they're not at this point yet, so I wouldn't be teaching this. I just teach them on-ball defense and practice that. And then eventually you might get to a point, you might have one kid who's playing, they might play rep and they might know this sort of knowledge, and then you can help them with this and say, hey, you need to get to that low eye spot, get to your high eye. And they'll go, oh yeah, that's right. And then we've got consistency between their rep coach and their domestic coach. So they're hearing the same sort of message from a few different people, which is really powerful for kids in their learning. All right. So next we've got a couple of drills that you can use. So the first one is just a good one for teaching your off-ball defense, and it's called the shell drill. And simply put, it's just because it's like a turtle shell. So it's just 4 plays. You can do it with 3 plays. You can do it with 5, whatever. So I always do this one with, no matter what team I coach, we always do some shell drill. So all it is it's just 4 on 4. They all start outside the 3-point line, and they pass the ball, and then they just got to adjust to where they go. In the past, what I've done is I usually like to stand down here outside the court, and I just point with my hands and I make a direction, and that's where they're going to pass the ball. And the offense pass the ball to those sort of spots, and the defense adjust their position. And once they've adjusted correctly, I'll point another direction and they'll pass. And then after they've gone, around and back, I'll say go, and they play 4 on 4. So we start off with doing it, so they walk through it. They go, okay, they get this spot, that spot, this spot, and then we go live in the drill, and we see if they can remember where they're going to get to. Most times they forget, but the more you do it, the more they'll remember. And it's just come back to those teaching points of telling them of where to be, all right, during the drill. Not so worried about the outcome of that, just make sure they get to the correct spots. Now on here, I'll just run through this one here. This is our club website. If you've been on here, there's a section on here, Coach's Corner. And this has a lot of resources that you can find beneficial. So down here are a whole bunch of different drills that you can do. So some based on dribbling, on defending, and then footwork, passing, and shooting.
Mate, we can't see that, mate.
Oh, you can't see this one?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's try and share again. How about now?
Yes, that's better. Yep.
You can see it now? Oh, perfect. So that's just our Craigieburn Eagles homepage there. And then we go Coach's Corner. And then we have a range of different drills here. So there's that sort of 5 skill areas Drew spoke about last week. And here's some drills to go off it as well. And see, you've got all different ones to have a go at and build into your repertoire. And if you click on them, I hope this works. Just let me know, Drew, if you can see it.
Yeah, mate, we're good.
You good? Yeah, cool. So this is what each one looks like. It tells you what sort of skills you're covering here. It gives you a rundown of the drill, how it looks on the court, and the instructions, and some teaching points on that. So things that you can emphasize, with your players on what they're going to do. I'll come back to this one in a second because I'll get through the other thing I want to show, which is, have you still got this one?
We're on COVID updates, mate.
Oh, we're on COVID updates. You don't want that one. Let's try again. Heard enough about COVID. All right. See defending now?
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. So I'll share this document with you guys as well, but I'm also in the process of transferring all these drills into the same format that that last one was in. So I'll go through here and share just some of my sort of particular ones that I like to use regularly with all this. And one of the first ones I'm going to pick on here is this 2-on-1 box half court drill. All right. So I understand that a lot of you may not know what's happening here, but what this simply means is each number represents a player. Circle means they have the ball. Dotted line means a pass, and an arrow means movement, and the squiggly one means dribbling. So you start with 5 players here, 1 in each corner and 1 under the basket. And you can set up a cone at this sort of arc there, or however far you want to put it. And then on go, what happens is player 1 here will make a pass up to player 2. They can't make the distance, they take a couple of bounces and they'll make that outlet pass. And as they sort of go, player 5 gets out and runs around that cone. Then from here, after player 1 passes the 2, player 2 and player 3 come down 2 against 1 against this player here. So off this one, player 5 is going to make a decision and try and guard the 2 players, which is a hard task. But in basketball, the amount of times that you are having to guard 2 players at the one time is actually it's a high chance of happening. The game is based around getting an advantage, so you have a free run at the basket. You'll find yourself in those positions. So we try and put these kids in these sort of positions so they can learn to think on their feet, and then because this will happen to them in a game. So 2-on-1, and then they make a play at the ring, and then after they make the score, so player 5 was the one on defense. He'll come to the side there. Whoever sort of shoots it becomes the guy in the middle here. The other player goes out wide, and player 1 and 4, who were the guys at the baseline here, they move up to the halfway point, and then they come down, and we go again and circle through. Another one here is 2-on-1 with the trail defender. So this is like a little bit more realistic in the fact that you can't be 2-on-1 for an extended period of time. Eventually, that person who gets lost on defense will catch up unless they're injured. or hurt themselves or something, but they will eventually catch up. So this one is here. You have player 1 with a basketball here, player 2, 3, and 4, all on the baseline. So player 1 and 4 are on one team, and player 2 and 3 on the defensive team. So on a coach instruction, you say go, and then all players run out around the cones, and they go to make a score. So player 3 has to run a bit further, so that gives player 1 and 4 a bit of an advantage to try and get a quick score. So player 2 is a bit shafted, and they'll have to make some decisions and try and hold the ball up and give player 3 some time to come back and play catch up. And if they can get back to a 2-on-2 game, that's probably a win for the defense. You know, that would be a big raps on them for that one. Another one that I've used a lot across all levels is this next one here, 3-on-3 across the baseline. So this is, as it says in the name, it's 3-on-3, and you've got these 3 defenders who start across the baseline. So in this picture, it's red team against the dark team, and the red player 1 here starts the ball. All right. So from there, player 1 passes to player 2, who passes to player 3, and he's going to pass to player 1 on that team, and eventually to get to player 3 in this corner over here. All right. The tricky thing about this one is it's about where people move. So we always say you go diagonal on this one. So after player 1 passes the ball, they're going to run all the way out here and guard this player on the diagonal out here. Player 3, once they pass the ball, they're going to run all the way out here and guard that player on the diagonal. And player 2, they can just run straight. All right. And then once they catch the ball, once player 3 gets the ball, we say you go live, which means you can score. So the 2 things in this one, I'd say once player 3 catches the ball, we go live. I say once player 1 catches the ball, you can steal the ball. Because one thing that you'll notice is player 1 will do like this big lob pass, player 2 will do this big lob pass, player 3 does a big lob pass, and then player 1 will be here by then, and they steal the ball. They're like, over, I'm on offense. Whereas if we say you can't steal the ball, intercept the ball until player 1 has caught it. So that means they'll make good passes through here, and then player 2 and player 3 will work really hard to try and get that interception. And once player 3 gets it, you play. So off this, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can just rotate one spot across. All right. And if you've got more players, you can have them in lines behind here. Or you could have like another team behind here as well. If you've got 9 players, you might have 3 teams of 3. This team goes and plays. Winner stays on, next group come on. And then another way, an adaptation to this drill is to make it with a bit of advantage, is to make player 1 run up here around the cone before he gets to his player, which just makes it a little bit more challenging. So drill as per normal, except for player 1 running straight out here, he has to run around there and then get to his player, which then gives these players a slight advantage and makes the 2 other defenders think on their feet and promotes their decision making a little bit to try and cover for that player for when he gets back. Another similar one here with this around the cone one. I run this one all the time with my domestic under 10 girls team. Just 2 lines, one with the ball, one without, and they dribble around the cone, and it's one-on-one. And we just try and encourage the defender to try and catch up and get in front and block their path and influence the shot. So that's the big 2 teaching points on that one, is block the path, influence the shot. Same thing we spoke about earlier throughout the presentation. And then I'll just go to this last one here. This number and line drill. This is something I use with my youth league players. I really like this one. You just have, it's like similar to a shell drill, but you start your defensive team in a straight line. And then on your call, you pass to any player on the outside here and you shout a number. So each player in this line is a designated number. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this picture here, the coach has passed this guy out here and they've said 3. So player 3 must go to there, and these other 3 guys have to match up on someone else. So I like this one because it creates once again, decision making, and it makes people talk, which I think is really important in defense when you're playing, is to talk what player you've got, to know even if it's a number, if it's a name, you know who you're guarding. So in this situation, it worked really well for our youth league team and even some of the junior teams I've coached, because it made them call out who they're going to, and which actually, in fact, made us play better defense because everyone knew who was where. So, you know, this person ran out and said, oh, I've got Morgan, or I've got James out here. And so it just didn't allow for confusion. And most times when you're playing defense is when you get scared or scored on, not scared, scored on, it's because of confusion. You know, you get confused of, oh, I thought I had him. Oh, I wasn't sure if you were going to him or I was going to him. Whereas this one promotes that communication so you know who's going to where. And then I'll probably say a lot of other drills are very similar to this. One-on-one drills with a cone, dribbling around, making a pass, and then playing that catch-up. So I'll send this through to you all so you can have a look at. But then in the coming days, we'll also post this onto our Coach's Corner. Just be warned that it's got everything on here. So I'm not going to limit it. It's got some full court defending things. It's got some shooting things. So it's got all the drills that eventually are going to be on the Coach's Corner are being put onto this document first before we do that. That is pretty much everything that I was going to chat about and wanted to go through. I know it seemed probably quick. I think it went very quick for me, and a lot of juicy content in there that I may have brushed over a little bit. So if you do have any questions, I'll check. Are we denying one pass away? Yes. So if your player is one pass away from the ball, a point of emphasis for us going forward is going to be in a denial position. And Andrew's just put in there about which is good. So if there's any other questions, you can throw them into the chat box. I'll email you guys all the stuff from today. I'll email my presentation, the video link, and the skill or the document with all the drills on it that you can run your eyes over. And you'll have my email then. You can feel free to hit me up with any sort of questions you got, anything further, any other cool drills you got that you want to share. You know, you can always run it by me, ask me for advice. I'm always happy to do that. So if there's nothing else further, guys, we can call it there, and I can thank you for your time. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.